Hi, welcome back to Above and Beyond's video series on the Bernina Q20, Q24 with QMatic automation. My name is Al, and we're Above and Beyond Creative Sewing in Nanuet, New York, your Bernina long arm dealer. So we've gotten to the point now where we are going to set up a design on the screen and get our machine ready to actually do the quilting. And I'd like to show you how easy it is to do that. So currently, from our last video, you may remember we set up our quilt area and we set up our quilt size on the screen. The quilt area is denoted by the red box up at the top. The quilt size is the full quilt that you see here. So the first thing we need to do is choose our design. To do that, we're going to go into the Tool Center and click this plus button here, which goes to the design screen. Now what's really neat here is you can tag any particular kind of design you want, and you can see there are so many designs to pick from. We're going to go right to pantograph because we've decided to do a pantograph, and I'm going to choose match any tag. And this is going to give me all my pantograph designs in one place. The design we've chosen to use, if we scroll down to the bottom here, is called scrap paper. So I'm going to click on that design, and it's going to bring it into my design center. This is a great place to store your favorite designs for easy access. So I only have the one design in there right now, so I'm going to go ahead and close this screen. And look, it shows up in my design center right down here. So now I'm going to bring that design onto my quilt. First, I'm going to zoom in a little bit because I want to be able to see exactly where I'm going to place this design. And I'm just going to double tap that, and it shows up on my screen. Now that's kind of small, so I'm going to enlarge it a little bit. I simply highlight that design, go to the Resize tab, which is right here, and I'm going to use my keypad to resize it. And right now it's 7 inches long by 4 inches high. I'm going to change the 4 inches to about 8 inches. And we'll see how that looks. Now you'll notice that it says maintain ratio, and the reason you want to maintain the ratio is so that it doesn't get out of square. And I'm going to hit the check mark and see what that looks like. Whoops, I guess that didn't take. Let's do that again. We're going to go to keypad, 8 inches. Oh, and I forgot to hit apply. So we do need to hit apply, and there's my design. So now I'm happy with that. I'm going to go ahead and hit the check mark and have my design now enlarged on the screen. Now because I'm sewing from edge to edge, and if you recall, we made our quilt a little bit bigger than what our final product we want it to be. And normally you can sew right off the quilt onto the batting. We're not going to do that today. What I'm going to simply do is take this design and drag it into the top left corner right over both edges of the quilt, just like so. And so now it's going to hang off the left and hang off the top a little bit. And I'll explain to you why we're going to do that when we cut the design. So now we need to add a bunch of those across the whole quilt. So I'm going to go ahead and press the plus tab until I fill up the whole quilt, just like so. So pretty easy to do that. It goes right across, and we're good. Now the next step you can do several ways. You can either copy and paste the next row, or you can use the layer tab to add more rows as you go down. My favorite method of doing this is to copy and paste it. The reason is that allows me to reverse the path on the second row, and then I don't have to keep moving the machine back and forth. It sews to one end, comes down, and sews the other row, and it continues to do that through the whole quilt. So if we just have this whole row highlighted, it's in red, I'm going to hit copy, and I'm going to drag the next row directly under it and nest it exactly where I want it. So just like that. Let's get that a little bit closer. There we go. And I'm happy with the position there. Now because my second row is highlighted in red, at this point I can reverse the path. So it's going to start at the top left, work its way to the right, drop down, and work its way to the left. So I'm very happy with the way that looks. Now I'm going to highlight both rows. Whoops, I'm going to group both rows together and make one single design. So now this is one completed design that's nested exactly the way I want it. At this point now, I can use my row function to add more rows. If I come over here to my row button, which is this square right here. And by the way, I'll mention to you, with every Bernina QMatic system, you get a reference sheet which shows you what all the buttons are. So you don't have to guess what they are. You just look at your reference sheet and it tells you this is resizing, this is cutting, etc., etc. So this is going to be adding our rows. It's called a multiply feature. I'm going to go ahead and press the plus or the down function, and I'm going to scroll down through my whole quilt and make sure that I have my entire quilt set up with design. Now you'll notice, because I use the copy and paste function, the spacing here, the gap between the first one and the second one, is a little bit off. But that's easily fixed because you have a spacing function here, horizontal, vertical, and offsetting for nesting. That's really right at your fingertips. It's so simple. I'm going to press the close the gap a little bit, and we're going to bring that up to match the first row. Once I'm satisfied with that, I press the check mark, and now I have it all ready to go. And you can see if I zoom out, you'll see the entire quilt ready to be quilted. Now you may be saying to yourself, hey, you've got designs hanging off the edge, the top, the bottom, everywhere. There's a cool scissor function on the QMatic which makes things so much easier than having to position designs in perfectly. If we highlight just our first group there, well, actually it highlighted the whole thing because it grouped everything together. So I'm going to go ahead and hit ungroup. We're going to highlight just the first group, the first two designs that I created initially. That's now in red. That means I can edit it. I'm going to go to my scissor function, and I'm going to be cutting the left side vertical. Okay, and then I'm going to do the entire quilt, not just the selected design. I'm going to take my scissor and put it right on that left edge, and I'm going to hit the check mark, and it's going to cut the whole left edge of the quilt. Obviously, I'm going to do the same thing on the top and the right side, so let's go ahead and get that ready. I'm going to highlight those first two designs. I'm going to choose my scissor. This time I want to cut horizontal, but I do want to do the entire quilt. And I'm going to put the line just inside the safe area. Whoops. Let's get to that. There we go. And I'm going to hit the check mark and cut the whole top. And now I'm going to do the right side. I'm going to highlight that design again, choose the scissors. I'm going to do vertical entire quilt. But this time I want to cut to the left of the scissor, not to the right, which is what I've been doing. So I very simply touch the invert button. And now it'll cut everything to the right of my line. So I find my line, place that exactly, hit the check mark, and now I've cut everything to the right. By doing this, you've also done one other thing. You've connected all the designs. So it's not going to stop at the end of the row and you have to pull the machine down and place your next design. It's all connected now. So there'll be a running stitch along both edges of the quilt, and that's how it connects the design. And that makes it so much easier. Now you may be asking yourself, what about the bottom row? You'll see I still have design outside of my quilt area at the bottom. I leave that just the way it is. And the reason I do is when I get to the end of my quilt, my fabric may have stretched a little bit, or maybe I didn't have it perfectly positioned. And I don't want to discount the fact that the design may not fit exactly right. So I leave it just like that. And when I get to the end of the quilt, I do my final cut when I'm ready to stitch that last row. And that just really works out perfectly. So that's how we set up the quilt on the QMatic. And now it's just a matter of pressing start. So I'm going to go ahead here and I'm going to highlight that row. I'm going to, at this point, go to the queuing. I'm going to make sure everything else is dequeued. I'm going to select simply the first row and I'm going to hit the check mark. And now it's going to hit, we're going to hit play. And now the machine is calculating where it has to position. And it's asking me, would I like to do a start or a point closest to the design? Now, point closest to the design really comes in handy if you run out of thread or if you break a thread. You can choose point closest to the design, and that'll start you off right where you left off. We're going to do start point, so I'm going to press start point, and we're going to now watch the machine move over to the top left and start quilting. And it's going to happen any second. There we go. And now it's moving. All by itself. I'm not touching it. There's no magic here. This is just the absolute coolest way to make a quilt. It's the easiest, and you don't have to struggle with the quilt. It just does the work for you, which is phenomenal. So it's going to get to that point right there. Let me find my scissors, which are right over here, excuse me. You do need to bring up the bobbin thread. I'm going to grab the top thread. I'm going to press the bring up bobbin thread button. It's going to take a single stitch, sweep out the bobbin thread, hold this off to the side, and press the check mark. And there it goes. And then I'm going to just snip these threads, and it is now quilting all by itself. So that is how to set up the QMatic with the automation system and how to run the machine to get started doing that. Again, we're Above and Beyond Creative Sewing. Our next video is going to introduce how to advance the quilt and place your next design, which is very easy, obviously, on the Bernina QMatic. My name is Al. We're Above and Beyond Creative Sewing. If you have any questions or you'd like to have one of these in your own home, give us a call, 845-623-4313, and we're glad to help. Thanks for joining us. Take care.